Hey everyone and welcome. In this video we look at a debate on talk radio with Dan Wooton featuring the Antifa, that stands for anti-fascist if you didn't know, handbook author Mark Bray and Senator Ted Cruz's former advisor Hal Lambert.
And I do believe that we have rotten politics, and I'm not using that as an exaggeration.
In this debate, we see a lot of revealing comments by the Antifa thug, and yes, I do mean thug, and also Hal does a great job of forcing the anti-West communist Antifa to reveal what drives Antifa, and it isn't fighting against fascism, it's covert communism in my opinion, using violent revolt. Now, before I go any further as well, everyone, I'd like to say this isn't an opinion on what happened with George Floyd. I would like to wait for more evidence to give an opinion on that if I'm ever going to. If you want my opinion right now, without any facts or any evidence whatsoever, it looks extremely bad. And I don't blame people for being annoyed at this point, but Antifa are a different story, and that's what we're going to look into.
Donald Trump, of course, is blaming this organization Antifa, which stands for anti-fascist, for being behind many of the more violent protests. So to debate exactly what's going on now, I am joined by Mark Bray. He is the author of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. He's also a historian of human rights, terrorism, and political radicalism.
Well, that statement right there is quite telling, isn't it?
In modern Europe at Rutgers University, and by Hal Lambert, who is a former advisor to the Republican Senator Ted Cruz. So Mark Bray, obviously protests have also taken place here in the UK.
Peaceful protests for the most part, unless you count social distancing, obviously.
But Antifa is a new organisation to many of us.
You mean you, Dan? You mean you?
So can you explain exactly what this movement is, and is Antifa a violent movement?
At this point, I'd like to point out, Dan isn't that stupid. He will know exactly who Antifa are. This is extremely good interviewing techniques, in my opinion. But what say you?
Yes, well, it's important to first clarify that Antifa is not a uniform, overarching organization with a leader or a headquarters or a command structure. It's a kind of social revolutionary politics of self-defense against the far right that has autonomous groups around the country.
Bit like cells, then. All
of which are fairly small. The membership doesn't usually range beyond like 10, 15, 20 members.
Let's look at that claim, shall we? Quick internet search, 2 minutes, this is what I found. Does this look small to you?
Would you compare it to the Extinction Rebellion or Black Lives Matter? Is it similar to that sort of movement?
Much smaller. Much smaller. The thing is that, anyone can kind of show up and participate in Black Lives Matter or Extinction Rebellion. These Antifa groups are relatively closed because they're concerned about infiltration from the far right and law enforcement. So it's really ludicrous and politically disingenuous to attribute the entirety of this really largest rebellion we've seen in the U.S. in half a century to this relatively small, diffuse network of revolutionaries.
Revolutionaries, you hear that?
Are these revolutionaries violent, as President Donald Trump claims?
Well, sometimes, sure. I mean, we've seen in the U.S. in recent years the confrontations they've had with white supremacists in Charlottesville. They smashed windows to shut down Milo Yiannopoulos' talk in Berkeley.
They've done a lot more than that. If you want to know what they've done, guys, go and check out Twitter and type in YouTube Antifa. See what comes up. You'll be awakened a little bit. You'll be surprised.
That's a small part of what they do, but it is part of what they do. So I'm not denying that there's a possibility that there are some Antifa members in some of these demonstrations. It's just that they're a drop in the bucket, and attributing this unrest to them distracts from the very legitimate grievances and rage that is being manifested throughout these demonstrations.
Which is exactly what he's doing. He's fighting for a revolution while people are showing their protest against what happened.
No, of course. I mean, this is clearly something which has not just captured the spirit and the fury of the US, but across the world. But I'm just trying to get to the bottom of Antifa, because obviously this is really an organization that has sprung up in the public's knowledge and imagination over the past couple of days, but you are the expert on them. So would you compare them to sort of like the Black Panther movement? I mean, where do they stand?
That's closer. I mean, but there are Antifa groups, anti-fascist action groups in the UK as well. And the UK tradition was greatly influential on the development of this tendency within the US. But again, sure, a lot of the people that are participating in property destruction are radical leftists of different kinds, but there's also plenty of people who are not part of a group, not necessarily ideologically committed one way or the other, who are simply fed up and see no option after the empty words from politicians year after year in response to police killings. Then maybe we need to grab the attention of the country by burning it down.
And there you have it. This has got nothing, in Antifa's eyes, this has got nothing to do with honouring George Floyd or getting justice or anything like that. It's about tearing down the country, is it not? Out of the man's mouth.
Donald Trump says Antifa should be classified as a terrorist organisation. Now, I know there's a whole load of issues about whether that could be done anyway, but are they a terrorist organisation in your view?
Damn right they are.
Well, they're not even an organization, first of all. It's a kind of movement of diffuse groups. And second, it's the police that are killing people. Antifa in the U.S. have never killed anyone. This is clearly a transparent ploy to distract away from the underlying social issues behind the death of George Floyd.
So what do Antifa want?
I mean, they want to abolish the police. They want to abolish capitals, and they're revolutionaries, right? There's no doubt about that. There aren't that many of them compared to the larger movement.
So they want to abolish police?
They do, and they're not alone. The thing is that the profile of police abolitionism has grown exponentially with Black Lives Matter, with a critique of how the origins of the police in the U.S. grow out of white supremacy, out of capitalist domination, to try and think of what a different kind of world could look like, because it's clear that they just keep on killing black people, abusing protesters, while the bankers who ruin the economy are walking scot-free.
Okay, and do you know how they intend to achieve their goals?
Well, anti-fascist Antifa members are also part of other kinds of social movements, Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, union organizing. And so for them, Antifa is sort of one component of the revolutionary politics designed to stop the far right. The kind of more constructive vision of creating a new world they usually carry out through other kinds of platforms.
Remember, far right to the extreme left means workers.
Got it. Okay, let me bring in Hal Lambert, a Republican advisor. Hal, where do you stand on this whole issue of Antifa? Do you agree with Donald Trump that says they should be classified as a terrorist organization?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Antifa is the group that's actually instigating the violence around the protests. So you have protesters, and then you have Antifa showing up. There's a video of Antifa paying.
Mark Bray's just denied
people.
that.
I've actually seen that video with my own eyes. And I've got to say, there's no proof that the guy is Antifa, but if anyone looks like Antifa, it's this guy.
Well, there's video of actual payment being made on the street. And, you know, Mark, I'd love to know from Mark, where does Antifa get their money? Who's financing them?
Do you know, Mark?
He's done a lot of research. He sounds like he supports them. So,
do you know, Mark? Do you know how they're financed?
Are we ready for the squirm? You ready? Listen.
Wait, there's a video that they're paying people? That just sounds like a ludicrous far-right conspiracy theory.
And there we have the usual trope smear. They're like stuck records, aren't they, some of these people?
It's all over social media. But anyway, where does Antifa get their money, Mark?
They don't really have much money.
Okay, so they just show up with bricks and are just loosely organized, conscious citizens that are out trying to change society on their own.
Well, I mean, they grew out of the anarchist movement, which has been doing this for decades for those who've been paying attention. And I mean,
and who's funding them?
The common far right scare tactic.
Who's funding them, Mark?
They're not a movement. It's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. George Soros is financing them.
If this man says conspiracy, he actually means true. Just listen to how instantly angry he got.
They don't actually have their own autonomy or free volition. They are being publicly deployed by the Democratic establishment. I mean, we've heard this over and over again. You know, you're in boots because your one premise of the system is under attack and handle it.
Because, Hal, you must acknowledge that the killing of George Floyd, which is just so unconscionable on so many levels, so devastating, so tragic, so brutal, you must accept that this has set off a great social movement in your country at a time when I guess emotions are riding very high already during a lockdown where there's been a lot of criticism of the government. So regardless of the role of Antifa, you must accept that this is actually a very, very genuine movement.
Well, I can tell you, it was definitely a horrible, horrible scene that happened in Minneapolis. What I would say back to that is, look, the cities where the protests and riots are happening, and the city of Minneapolis, they're controlled by Democrats, far left, mostly Democrat mayors. The police chief was appointed in Minneapolis by a Democrat mayor. The police chief, by the way, is black. So the problems that seem to be stemming from the police departments in these major cities where they're saying there's systemic racism looks to be a Democrat problem, because they're run and have been run, many of them for decades, by the Democrats. So I think that's where they maybe need to take a look. If there's systemic racism, they need to take a look in the mirror.
And Mark Bray, where do you stand on this?
Then why did Trump say that almost all of the governors are weak?
Because many of the governors in these states are also Democrats, where the rioting is happening. So the governors, look, we don't have
Trump yelled at all the governors.
Understand, we don't have a federal police force in the United States. You don't call in a federal police force. The states and local municipalities control their police. So the people are saying, well, hey, President Trump needs to do this or that. The governor's in charge of the National Guard in their states. The mayors can call for the National Guard. They need to take care of this if they're going to bring in reinforcements for their own police. But that's not the job of the federal government typically.
Mark Bray, where do you stand on the protests that have turned violent? Because, of course, many African Americans seem very disturbed. It's very often their businesses that are being burnt to the ground. Do you accept that violence and that willful damage is unacceptable, and that two wrongs certainly do not make a right?
This should be good, eh?
My understanding of the kinds of origins of this destruction has everything to do with the lack of faith that particularly many young black people have in the ability of the system to reform itself after years of police killings of African Americans. And frankly, riots work in commanding the attention of society to take these issues seriously.
And there you have it. He's admitting there that they will never stop. They will continue to start riots and destruction and burn things to the ground. How are these not terrorists at this point? I'm just wondering.
If other methods haven't worked, then it seems fairly reasonable to me to destroy some property to get some attention. It's always important to distinguish whatever your opinion is about property destruction. It's not the same as taking lives. And already, apparently, we had the National Guard kill someone in Louisville today.
But Mark.
So what you're saying, Mark is okay with property destruction, and if someone tries to defend their property, are they allowed to do so with force, Mark?
Well, that's basically what class struggle is, right? That's
I'm asking the question: are they allowed to?
Well, that's the thing, is that, the working class and the employing class have different interests. So when they struggle, there's going to be a conflict. And this is, apart from a racial conflict, also a class struggle.
Agitators, then.
In a context where billionaires have gained their wealth.
But Mark, just back to your previous point.
These aren't
I
billionaires.
have seen, sorry, Hal, just hold on one moment. Mark, I have seen the most heartbreaking videos of African American men saying, do not send our young boys, our teenagers out on the streets to fight the police and to cause damage, because that is actually just going to send them the worst possible message about how to live.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the other methods haven't worked. Whenever you have a mass uprising...
And what gives you the right to say it hasn't worked?
There are going to be some businesses or some individuals who, lose out on the conflict. I just don't see another method other than essentially ringing the alarm bells. This is the history of struggle. This is the history of confronting a system and recognizing that it can't be reformed.
Hal Lambert, Donald Trump has also said today that everyone knows that much of the violence is coming from looters. He says it's people that figure they can get free stuff by running into stores and running out with television sets. I saw it. A kid has a lot of stuff. He puts it in the back of a brand new car and drives off. You have every one of these guys on tape. Why aren't you prosecuting them? Now, the harder you are, the tougher you are, the less likely you're going to be hit. Do you agree with Donald Trump that this is just people wanting free stuff? Because that seems to be missing the point a little bit about what actually caused these riots in the first place, does it not?
Well, I think first of all, there's a very clear political impetus behind looting. That you can see that if Wall Street has looted the economy, and if people are without jobs and it's going down the tank, and capitalism can't adequately respond to people's needs, then they're going to go and meet their needs themselves.
But Hal Lambert, as a supporter of Donald,
as
a supporter of Donald Trump, Hal Lambert, do you agree with the president?
First of all, let me just say one thing. Mark Bray just said, when people don't have jobs. Are you kidding me? There were more jobs available in the United States than there were people to work in them until the virus hit. So let's not talk about, he's saying the system wasn't working. We have to have an upheaval. I hope that the listeners are listening to someone right now. Mark Bray is on your radio station calling for an overthrow of the United States. That's what he's doing. And he's saying that it should be done.
Well, it's very disturbing on both sides. We are watching from afar, and it's very disturbing on both sides because Donald Trump, I'm also just being told, has said, according to the US broadcaster ABC, it is a war in a certain sense, and we are going to end it fast, which Hal Lambert seems to me like Donald Trump is threatening more violence.
Which is exactly what this Antifa prat's just done, innit?
Mark Bray just said it was. He just said it was a war. We heard it from him, from basically the spokesperson for Antifa.
Well, it is a fascinating, very, very disturbing, divisive debate.
Now, my opinion on this, I really don't like Antifa. I don't like its ideology. I don't like its violence. I don't like that to fight fascists, they act like fascists. I don't think Antifa care about BLM or George Floyd's totally unjust killing. I think Antifa are pretending to fight for people of colour for the purpose of mass destruction of the USA and are causing most, not all, of the destruction. Do I think they are an organisation? 100% I do, and the pictures prove it in my opinion, but what say you? I've seen numerous tweets from people of colour begging them to stop, yet still they smash and burn, hidden inside a protest/riot that is not theirs. Anyway, as a last note, to George Floyd's family and Minnesota, I hope for real justice for Floyd, I really do. No one deserves that. But this Antifa-fueled destruction is not real justice. Please stop. But anyway, I'd like to know what you think, everyone. Do you think Antifa will be designated as a terrorist organisation? And if so, what do you think will happen? Do you think it's just more bluff and bluster from Trump to try and get them to stop? I'm not too sure. We'll see how it goes, shall we? But I would like to know your opinion. If you're new, don't forget to hit the like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Share it out. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.